All right, folks, welcome in. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. Today, we are going to be talking on Bleacher Report Live about the Rams' 26th overall draft pick this year in the draft. The reason why we're diving into this is because I feel like now the Rams have so many different options here that they can attack. Now that they have assigned Ahkello Witherspoon back to the roster, they added Nate Landman the day prior. And so now you quite literally have every hole plugged up. It's all about upgrading the roster and getting the most out of your pick moving forward. So, looking at pick 26, there are some options here. We're going to get started here at the very beginning. We're going to go through each and every position, whether or not it makes sense. And I'm going to explain their options here. So, the first option here is to simply trade down. You don't have a pick in round 2 because you traded away to the Carolina Panthers to pick up Braden Fisk last year when you traded up 12 spots. So you could theoretically trade down, net yourself a second round pick, maybe add another third round pick and a fourth round pick, something along those lines. I think here's the thing. What you really hope for if you want the Rams to trade down is this. This pick becomes way more valuable, so much more valuable to the point that a trade calculator, a draft grade calculator, those points. You ever see the draft pick calculator? Yeah, that goes out the window if a certain quarterback falls into the Rams' lap. Because the Rams, if they don't choose that said quarterback, that's a fifth-year option for the most important position on the field, and it'd be falling right into their laps. So that pick now becomes worth more. They'd be able to trade, and get more in return. So, of course, I'm talking about guys like Shedeur Sanders. I'm talking about guys like Jalen Milroe, although I don't think he's going to go in the first round. Jackson Dart is, of course, in play. Tyler Shuck. I don't see Cam Ward falling that far. I just don't. But it's so weird because I could see Shedeur Sanders going number 2 overall to the Cleveland Browns, and then I could see him falling off a cliff here. Here are the teams that I think he could go to. I think the Titans are going to pick the best player available. After that, you have the Browns. They're picking a quarterback. The question is it going to be Cam Ward or is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? At 3, I think the Giants could pick a quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers that they're trying to go in, win now. So I wouldn't be surprised they added somebody to their roster at pick 3. Then at pick 4, you have Drake May. So the Patriots aren't going quarterback. At 5, you got Trevor Lawrence. So the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't going at quarterback. Then you have 6, the Raiders. They love this quarterback draft so much that they tried to trade for Matthew Stafford and eventually acquired Geno Smith. So no, I don't believe the Raiders select a quarterback that high. The Jets just picked up Justin Fields. I don't suspect that the Jets are going to draft a quarterback. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is a team that wants to win early and often. At 8, you have the Carolina Panthers. Okay, they're sitting pretty there. Bryce Young had an emergence and a resurgence, and they feel good about him. 9, maybe the Saints, but at the same time, they kind of have to field a roster because they have Derek Carr. So you almost have that pressure to be forced to win now. Chicago has Caleb Williams. The 49ers are intriguing, but they just added Mac Jones and they have Brock Purdy. So unless they trade away Brock Purdy, I don't see them drafting a quarterback there. Dallas has Dak Prescott, who they're paying $60 million to. So I don't see them picking a quarterback there. Then you have Tua Tagovailoa and Zach Wilson over in Miami. Don't see a quarterback going there. Indy is interesting. Not really sure where they want to go here. There's some things going on there, of course. And then you have, a pick 15, Atlanta. Now, Atlanta just got Michael Penix Jr., so they won't be taking a quarterback. So you can start to see how this unravels. The Cardinals have Kyler. The Bengals have Joe Burrow. The Seahawks, I still don't think they draft a quarterback. They have Sam Darnold. I know it's pretty much a one-year deal, but I still don't think they take a quarterback that high. Then you have the Bucks. They have Baker, right? The Broncos have Bo Nix. The Steelers, that is probably the next best option. So This is what I'm talking about here. The Rams, if there is a chance, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a chance Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and Tyler Shuck are all available at 26. And I would advise the Rams to stay away from taking a quarterback at 26. So it makes that pick more valuable. That is the first thing that they can do is they can trade that away and trade down. They can also trade up. And I think that's certainly a possibility. You look at some of the players that will likely go before the Rams have a chance to draft. And, we're talking about receivers. If you guys want a receiver, if the Rams want a receiver, well, you got Matthew Golden. There's going to be probably a run on receivers before they get to the Rams. Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka. So there's definitely some wide receivers. Also, if you're trying to secure a certain player, let's say Colston Loveland, for instance, could see the Rams trade up and get him in the heat of the moment. If you're trying to somehow go all the way up and get Tedoroa McMillan, who's probably going to go in the top 15, there you have it, another trade up, right? That's an opportunity there. Tyler Warren, if he falls far enough, do the Rams maybe trade up for him, right? So there are trade up options. Personally, I wouldn't go that route. Not unless you really feel like you have to. You've fallen in love with a player. Today, adding Ahkello Witherspoon, and again, like I mentioned, Nate Landman the previous day, there's not a necessity to go out and get one of those positions this early on in the draft. But if you fell in love with a guy like Jalen Walker and he fell far enough, or you really like Jihad Campbell, or maybe you love just the overall versatility of Nick Manwari, something like that, or like a Jade Barron, I could see that. My feeling is that they're not going to trade up, but they could. My feeling is that absolutely they will not stay at 26. I don't care what anyone says. I do not see the Rams standing pat just because it worked out with Jared Verse at pick 19 last year. This is a team that tried to trade up multiple times, and they stayed at 19 because nobody was biting. Whether they were trying to get Bo Nix or not, I cannot confirm. But at one point, they were very much trying to get Brock Bowers. And at another point, they were very much trying to get Byron Murphy, who ended up going to the Seattle Seahawks. So because you had those two players that they were trying to trade up for and it didn't work out, they decided to sit pretty at 19, and Jared Verse fell into their lap. So could they stick at 26? I mean, I guess it's possible, but I really just don't see it. I see a trade down, could be a trade up, but I see likely a trade down here. But let's just say, for the hell of it, if they stay at 26, is there any chance they take a quarterback? I'm going to say no. I don't believe they would take a quarterback at 26. Then you got running back. I do think there's a chance at running back. Now, if they were going to trade up, I wouldn't be surprised. If they were just going to go caution to the wind, this is their year, they're going all in, whatever, I would not be surprised if they trade up to get Ashton Genty. I don't think that's what they're going to do, but if they trade up for an offensive weapon, I feel like it would be Genty or Warren. That's just kind of how I see it. But at pick 26, if they took a running back, I understand this might sound really high to some people, but I look at guys like Omarion Hampton. I look at guys like, not Quinshon Jenkins, Travion Henderson, guys like that I think could be in play here. I don't see them taking a running back in the first round. But if they did, I feel like Travion Henderson is kind of their best fit, and I think he'll be there in the next round, so I would just trade down. Then at wide receiver at this point in the draft, like I mentioned, Matthew Golden could be available. Emeka Ibuka could be available, right? I'm not saying they will, but they could. Luther Burden the third, right? Then you have Elik Ayomanor from Stanford, right? You got Jaden Higgins, who I think might go in the first round. So there are some options there for the Rams at pick 26 at wide receiver. Then you look at tight end, and this is where it gets interesting. And a lot of people right now, based on the way that they've done the things that they've done in this offseason, Colston Loveland feels like the best fit for them. Now, here's my pushback on Colston Loveland. I think he is an outstanding, route runner. I can see how he could work for the Rams, but I still I don't think he's a true inline tight end. So I think he adds another receiver to the books, but at this point, you paid Tutu, you paid Devontae, you have Puka, you have Whittington. I think adding like Colston Loveland at that point, it becomes a little crowded. He's versatile. And like I say, he's a great route runner, good natural hands receiver. He doesn't make guys miss. That's my issue. Not the best blocker either. So that's my issue with Colston Loveland. I don't think he's a true tight end. I think he's a big wide receiver. Where are the Rams on that? I guess we'll find out. And that's the only other guy I could see going in the first round outside of a Tyler Warren, who I think is a really good fit for them. Now, looking at the offensive line, don't rule this out because the Rams feel like they're sitting pretty here. They love everything they've done. They don't feel like they have to add anything to play right away. There are some opportunities. You look at Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas, right? He is definitely a guy that they have an opportunity with. You got Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. He could be there for the Rams. So there are some tackles there. Gray Zabel, who's not necessarily a tackle. Like he played, left tackle at North Dakota State, but is expected to translate over to guard. He could be an option there. Maybe they like him at right tackle, what have you. I don't think Connerly's an option, just his build, but he's a good player. Ariante Ursary, you got Donovan Jackson. So there's some opportunities here to get better at tackle. And keep in mind, you have Alaric Jackson long-term at left tackle. He signed a 3-year deal, but Rob Havenstein is in a contract year. And the draft isn't always just for the here and now. It's for the future too, because you're getting 4 years of cost control and cost-effective value. And that is really what it's all about. So that's something I think you have to look at here. I think when, looking at these tackles, I would probably say, a guy like Donovan Jackson does make some sense. Cameron Williams, I like him as well. I think Cameron Williams is like my favorite value for them. Charles Grant could be really good. This is a guy, that I think at William and Mary is so raw, but it might make sense for the Rams timeline. I'm not saying I would take him in the first round, but you look at Charles Grant, this is somebody who has crazy athleticism. And if you, start to really develop him, he can end up being a steal in this draft. So I look at him. Interior offensive line, I don't really think anybody would go at pick 26, maybe a Tyler Booker out of Alabama, but he's more of a guard at this point, not really a center, so you're not really adding something there. Plus, you have Bo Limmer. I'm not out on him. I just think that Coleman Shelton is the better option to start, and as do the Rams. So then you look at the defensive interior. They go out and they add Poona Ford to replace Bobby Brown. That stung. But at the same time, Poona Ford's a really good football player. They still have guys. You go out, you add Laryl Murchison back to the roster after letting, Neville Gallimore ended up going to the Colts, right? So you go out, you get him, great stuff there. But I think when you look at the interior, the Rams can always add there. They've done it in the past. Aaron Donald wasn't a need per se, but do you think the Rams regret picking him there? Absolutely not. But you look at players like a Derek Harmon or a Darius Alexander, Walter Nolan, and I think those are guys that do make sense as far as like a best player available type of pick. If a guy that you fall in love with is there, then I guess you pick him. And now here's the interesting thing. Byron Young is playing his tail off, right? He's going into year 3. That means soon you're going to have to pay him. Jared Verse is already one of the best pass rushers in football. You are going to have to pay him a lot of money. It does beg the question, do the Rams maybe go best player available, and is that best player an edge defender? And when you look, Donovan Waku, I totally didn't get that name right, I don't think, but he's from Boston College. Really, really good player, both in the run and, of course, in the pass rush area of his game. You got James Pierce Jr., formerly also of Tennessee, just like Byron Young. So those are some options there. If they do fall into their lap there, those are some, good options. Nick Scorton from, Texas A&M, Landon Jackson. So those are just some options there for the Rams. And that linebacker, if you do want to go after a linebacker, get a game changer in the first round, Demetrius Knight Jr., I think he might be, the best fit for the Rams. He seems like the type of guy you would go after. I really like Chris Paul Jr., though, on day 2. I like Carson, Schwessinger from, UCLA as well. So there are some options there. The question is, where is somebody like a Jalen Walker going to go? Because the thing that he adds is he's not just an off-ball linebacker, but he's kind of that hybrid we're starting to see where he can also rush the passer and do it very well. He's got great bend. But then also, of course, you have the kid out of Alabama. And so that's the thing, is that when you have Campbell as well, Jahad Campbell, it does change some things here. So there are some linebackers there. I'm not saying they'll necessarily draft one at 26. Then you have your cornerbacks. And since they just added Kello, that really kind of makes it difficult, because how are you going to keep everybody on the roster? But at the same time, Kello is in a contract year. Darius Williams is in a contract year. Kobe Durant is in a contract year. And so is Darion Kendrick. So you got 4 of your cornerbacks that are likely going to be on the 53 in a contract year. So you're looking at guys like Trey Amos. You're looking at Maxwell Hairston. You're looking at Siobhan Ravel. So those are just some options there. There are other corners as well. Jahdae Barron, to me, is by far the best fit for the Rams. He probably will not be there at 26. You probably will have to trade up for him. And then you look at safety, and you got some safeties there. I think Eric Watts is a really good fit for the Rams, probably the best fit of the safeties. Eamon Worry is another guy that, really good camp darling kind of there. Not camp, combine darling. You got Malachi Starks from Georgia. I did also forget to mention Will Johnson at cornerback from Michigan. He's an option there. So there are some guys here. Here's how I see it going, though, okay? I think the Rams are going to trade down. But let's just say if they don't, I think that most likely, the way I see it, if they stick at 26, they are probably taking a dynamic pass catcher. And is that a running back that can help you? Is that a tight end that can help you? The only one I could really see, or a wide receiver, the only one I could really see is Colston Loveland. It feels like a Ram. He's not who I would go after, because I think there's a better option, but I could absolutely see it. Here's what I would do if I were the Rams. I would trade down, right? I would absolutely trade down. I think there's a lot of value in this draft. And I've already heard, I'm sure you've heard it multiple times, the guy that you get at pick 20 is as good as the guy you get at pick 60, right? So when you're talking about a draft that's deep like that, I'm not necessarily trying to go, crazy and draft overly high on a certain player. When you look at just how this draft could go down, I think the Rams could trade out of the first round, get a second round pick, and then get a third round pick in return. If they're able to do that, then keep in mind, we're talking about this being a deep draft. We're talking about the 60th player being as good as the 20th player, right? So now the Rams can really start to focus. And I think Jaden Higgins or a Jalen Knoll makes a lot of sense for the Rams, because they have that familiarity with Nathan Schilhaas, who's going to be more involved in the passing game. He was the offensive coordinator at Iowa State before coming over to the Rams. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I mentioned Chris Paul Jr. He might be my favorite linebacker in this draft. Now, favorite doesn't necessarily mean the best, but Chris Paul Jr., really, really smart football player, a guy that can rush, a guy that can help you in the run game, and a guy that can cover. A well-rounded linebacker that allows Nate Landman to stay in a 2-down backer role and really thrive as a primary run defender. But you're getting a guy to complement Omar Spates in that sense. So I love that fit. Harold Fannin Jr. makes a lot of sense as well. Then I would probably trade down after that. So you add a third round pick, you add a second round pick. Obviously, you swap your first for a second to get an additional third. But I think with that additional third, you trade down, you get more picks. And, I think that you could get something, pretty decent there. Harold Fannin Jr. to me out of Bowling Green just kind of screams Ram. Every time I watch this guy, he makes guys miss. And I know that Gerald Everett didn't work out the way that they were hoping for, but they had a vision with Gerald Everett. A big reason why they like Gerald Everett, a big reason why Sean McVay, liked Jordan Reed as much as he did, is these guys generated missed tackles. So I look at these guys that could make guys miss, and that's not something Loveland does, but Harold Fannin Jr. had 32 missed tackles forced, which is the most in the country for a tight end. I also look at the running back position in the fourth round, and I see a guy like Brashard Smith, who has that, wide receiver background, can run a route tree, but is also explosive, ran a 4.39, shows up on tape, can make guys miss. And now you're adding another speed and another dynamic to that running back room. So that's kind of how I see it. And then you look at quarterback, and I think the best fit for quarterback is Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. This is a guy, look, it's not perfect. He's not the most perfect prospect. He has some things to work on. Perfect. That is literally perfect that he has some things to work on, because I don't have to worry about him making a big deal for not playing or being a backup to Jimmy Garoppolo. The reality is that the Rams are probably going to draft a quarterback in this draft. And my money is on a guy like Kyle McCord that they can develop, that doesn't have to play right away and isn't ready to play right away, that can sit there, wait, and learn. He's got everything you want in a developmental quarterback, except for that crazy athleticism that some other guys do have. But when I look at him, he's made some incredible throws. He can make any throw on the field. He's got a big arm. He's smart in the pocket. He's got good footwork. I trust this guy, because I think if you give Sean McVay to him and you have him sit behind Matthew Stafford, you can see he's not super athletic, but he's mobile enough. Sounds familiar? It's just like Stafford in that sense. The only thing is, you're not going to get any crazy arm angles or anything like that. Those bells and whistles that you get with the bigger, high priced, higher cost, higher item. You're not going to get that, but you're going to get a guy that has consistent mechanics. He's going to be consistent in his passing. He's got an arm, and he's played in some big time games, and he's stepped up. So I like Kyle McCord. I'd say the last guy I'd throw out there at quarterback that does, really intrigue me, because I do like Jackson Dart, and I also like Tyler Shuck, but those guys are probably going to go a little early. I think another guy to look out for is Jalen Milroe. I have no idea where he's going to go, but he just ran in the 4.3s. Not that I really care, because the film shows that, but there's something about Milroe. I'm not willing to bet against him. I think when you look at him, this guy is really what it represents for the next era of football. Really mobile quarterback, really like a dual threat quarterback. Reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts. Now, is he going to go in the second, third? I don't know. But when I look at Milroe at Alabama, he probably has the strongest arm in the draft. He's probably the fastest in the draft. And if he can work on some of his mechanics, and he can work on precision passing and get with an actual good fit, it depends on where he lands. But if he ends up in LA, I'm not banking, I'm not betting against this guy to be a franchise quarterback for this team. So I think there's a chance, despite this not being the best quarterback class, I think there's a chance for the Rams to get their quarterback in the future and not have to put all their eggs in the basket of 2026's draft. That also means that if you draft a guy like McCord, or you draft a guy like Jalen Milroe, depending on where they go in the draft, that also means that you don't have to stay committed to these guys if you indeed like somebody way more in the next draft, because you're not spending a first-round pick. If you spend a first-round pick on Shadur Sanders, you're stuck with him. If you spend a first-round pick on any of these guys, you're stuck with him. I like Jackson Dart. I'll just say this. Dart's probably going in the first round. I liked him a lot more when he was sitting there as a third-round talent. I don't like him as a first-round talent. I just don't think on that level he is nowhere near a first-round talent, in my opinion. That's where I expect him to go. I like him a lot. Don't take that as anything against him. There's only one first-round quarterback, in my opinion, grade-wise, and it's very simple. It's Cam Ward. So that's what I have for you guys. I think really the most realistic option is that the Rams are going to trade down. But I think if they do stay at 26, it's best player available. And if they trade up, it's to get a big-time offensive weapon that can help them the here and now, whether that is Tyler Warren, trading up for one of the receivers like a Buka or what have you, or it's, to go up and try and get Genty, because I could see that. I'm not saying it's likely to go up from 26 to how high you'd probably have to go to get Ashton Genty. Sounds kind of crazy, but I could see them doing that. However, I also want to remind people, this team is trying to work out an extension with Kyron Williams. So I could see them adding another running back to the room and being like a 1-2 punch. But make no mistake about it, I don't see, them going out and getting somebody to try to replace Kyron, right now. So that is that. But again, those are the options. After getting a Kella Witherspoon today, who knows what they do moving forward? We're gonna find out. But that's what I got for you guys. Appreciate Bleacher Report as always for having me. Be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan, including Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Kick. Also, just want to let you guys know that over on my channel, The Lounge with Jake Ellenbogen, I did interview Cameron Curl. So you guys can check out that video. There, I've also interviewed Akella Witherspoon and Bobby Brown. So if you're interested in those player interviews, you can check that out as well. But appreciate you guys tuning in. And that's going to do it. And we'll see what ends up happening. There's going to be a lot more content moving forward. I'll see you guys on Bleacher Report next Wednesday. Take care, folks. Later.